The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully cross all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
So yeah, it seems the more we respect cannabis, and the more it keeps giving to us. So I'm going to read Ryan's bio, and then Ryan will come up and share his wisdom with us. So 1 second. Okay, so Ryan is a cannabis consultant and educator. He helps patients understand how cannabis works and how to find the most appropriate dosing and products for their unique life circumstances. Ryan is a member of the Cannabis Healing Solutions, a collective dedicated to the building of community with cannabis through education, workshops, support groups, healing arts, and providing access to clean, safe cannabis medicine. So please join me in welcoming Ryan.
Thank you, Ash. I just want to thank Ash again for the amazing work that she does. It's had a tremendous impact on my life, so thank you.
Yeah.
And even though cannabis isn't commonly considered a psychedelic, a cool story is the Taoist shamans of ancient China used to use cannabis and a formulation of ginseng for very psychedelic ceremonies and divinatory purposes where they said that they could stop time and look forward into time. So cannabis is definitely a powerful medicine with a really interesting history. But the topic of today's talk is going to be cannabis as a medicine. So I've gotten to talk to a few of you so far, and it seems like quite a few of you are in the cannabis industry. But if I could see a show of hands of how many people have actually used cannabis before. Oh, wow. Okay, and
I didn't inhale.
do most of you use it for medicinal purposes? Or can I see how many people are actually using it as a medicine? Okay. And how many people are working within the cannabis industry? Okay, cool. So hopefully there's going to be information for all of you here, but definitely if you want me to go into more depth on any of the topics that I cover, any of the topics that I cover, please just raise your hand and ask a question, and I'll help you as best I can. So despite the prohibition and criminalization of this plant that we've been experiencing over the last almost century, humans have an incredibly long history of using this plant as a medicine. And there's a tremendous amount of folk wisdom that has accumulated around the use of this plant, but it's really only been within the last decade or so that we've begun to understand how this plant interacts with the human body on a cellular level. And so my intention in being here today is to share with you some of what researchers have learned about this plant and how it works, and hopefully empower you to use this plant to improve the quality of your life and get the most out of it as a medicine. So what is cannabis? How many people before tonight have never seen a cannabis plant before? Okay, well, in real life, have you ever seen a cannabis plant before? All of you, wow. Okay. So Cannabis sativa is the scientific name for a species of plant that includes many varieties, including cannabis, which is also called weed or marijuana, as well as hemp. Hemp is also part of this species of plant. And it's in these plants, they produce oils naturally to protect themselves from environmental stressors. And it's in these oils that we find the medicinal compounds that cannabis contains. And it's actually in the female cannabis plants and in their flowers that are the most potent source of these medicinal compounds. Hemp, in comparison, has relatively small amounts of medicine. However, it is a tremendously useful plant. Its fibers can be used for things like textiles or building materials or paper, and when compared with conventional sources of these materials like cotton or timber, it's much more sustainable. It has a much lower impact on the environment. It's highly renewable. So across the board, cannabis sativa is an incredibly useful plant species for humans. So how long has cannabis been used as medicine? Cannabis most likely originated in northern China on the borders of Mongolia and Siberia. And it's in this region that we have found the oldest archaeological evidence of the use of cannabis, and that's 25,000-year-old hemp rope cords have been found in pottery. However, the earliest archaeological evidence of cannabis being used as medicine was in this same area in northern China, 6,000-year-old scripts that are actually instructions on how to use cannabis for conditions like inflammation and pain. So, like I said, this is we have a very long history of using this plant as a medicine. It's always had a place in Chinese medicine. It's in their oldest pharmacopoeia, being listed for being able to treat over 120 different conditions. In Ayurvedic medicine as well, the ancient Hindus listed as one of 50 essential herbs. Ancient Greeks, Egyptians, Assyrians, and Jewish cultures all recognized cannabis's ability to treat a multitude of different conditions, and also noted its relative safety in use with its low toxicity level, no lethal dose, and very few side effects when compared with other herbs. And even in the United States, cannabis was a part of our official pharmacopoeia for conditions like epilepsy, rheumatoid arthritis, pain, and it wasn't until 1942 that it was actually removed from our pharmacopoeia and criminalized for political and economic reasons.
Ooh.
And just to show you some of what the images are, this is a postulated map of how cannabis may have moved throughout the globe based off of archaeological evidence. And then this is actual, like an ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia with different conditions that cannabis can be used for. So today, there are over 700 different conditions that people are using cannabis to treat. On the right side here, this is a partial list of some of these conditions. And as you look at this, you'll see that these conditions go into types of cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, autoimmune disorders, gastrointestinal issues, mood and psychological disorders. I mean, it's really a very broad spectrum of the conditions that cannabis can treat. And so the question arises, how is it possible that a single plant can treat so many different issues? And the answer to this question has to do with the physiological design of our own bodies and a network of receptor sites called the endocannabinoid system. So what is the endocannabinoid system? The endocannabinoid system is a network of receptor sites that's found throughout your entire body. It's in virtually every tissue, but these sites are most densely concentrated within your brain, central nervous system, and the organs that are responsible for immune function. And what the endocannabinoid system does is it maintains homeostasis within your body. This means your body's ability to stay healthy and within balance despite environmental stressors that it's being exposed to. So how exactly this works is when your body comes into contact with an environmental stressor, your body releases a chemical signal or a chemical compound that's called a cannabinoid. This signal binds to a receptor site within your body, and your body responds accordingly in order to maintain balance. So The endocannabinoid system is responsible for regulating a tremendous amount of bodily functions. This includes your nervous system, your immune system, your reproductive system, your circulatory system. I mean, it's pretty incredible how many things the endocannabinoid system manages in order to keep your body healthy and within balance or homeostasis. Now, the problem is that when there's an overload of these environmental stressors, like what we're doing to our lives and our environment today, so when your food is not clean, when your lifestyle is overly stressful, when your environment is toxic, your body's ability to produce these compounds on its own becomes impaired. And that's when diseases and opportunistic viruses and pathogens can wreak havoc on a body or an individual. So, what are cannabinoids? Cannabinoids can be broken into two different categories. You have endocannabinoids, which are the compounds that we produce endogenously within our own body. And then you have phytocannabinoids, which are cannabinoids that are produced within plants. Now, I've listed a few of the molecular structures of cannabinoids here on the right side. The top three are actually phytocannabinoids that are found within cannabis. The bottom two are endocannabinoids that you produce naturally within your body. So one thing to take note of here is that they're considerably structurally different in the way that the atoms are arranged in these molecules. But even though that they're structurally different, they're bioidentical in the actions that they create within your body. Meaning that phytocannabinoids can be a perfect supplement to a body that's deficient in endocannabinoids. And it gets even better than that. We find that the phytocannabinoids bind perfectly to the receptor sites within the endocannabinoid system. These receptor sites can only receive very specific kinds of compounds. That's part of how it keeps the body running the way it should. And phytocannabinoids bind perfectly to these receptor sites. And we find that when we introduce phytocannabinoids to a body that is deficient in endocannabinoids, it actually begins to develop more of these receptor sites, making the body more sensitized to the cannabinoids and making it more effective in not only making the medicine more effective, but also making the body more effective in taking care of itself and managing itself. It gets even better than that. We find that when you introduce phytocannabinoids to a body, it actually stimulates production of endocannabinoids again, bringing the body to a point where it can start to maintain homeostasis on its own. And we find that, cannabinoids and phytocannabinoids can be found in a lot of different plants. They're in things like maca, cacao, kava, but we find that cannabis is an incredibly potent source of these compounds, making it a really good candidate for making medicine. So what cannabinoids are found in cannabis? Well, there's over 100 known cannabinoids found in cannabis. And what's really incredible is that each one of these compounds by itself has a distinct reaction that it creates within the body. But then when you start to combine these compounds together in different combinations and also different proportions, it creates even more distinct reactions. So there's really, with this many cannabinoids, there's a lot of different kinds of medicine that you can make with this plant. And in these different combinations, they have unique effects, synergistic effects, where together they create a new effect than they would on their own. Potentiating effects, where they can take one compound and make it stronger or more effective, and modulating effects, toning down, say, THC is a really good example. When it's paired with CBD, it actually brings down or modulates the potency of THC, making it less psychoactive. Now, it's more than just cannabinoids that have these potentiating or modulating effects. It's also, there's other compounds within cannabis that can do this, including terpenes, and there's 400 known cannabinoids within cannabis. So what I see as the future of cannabis medicine is really we've only begun to scratch the surface and beginning to understand what these compounds do and the action that they're going to create within the body. But the future is really understanding what each one of these compounds do and then combining it to create very specific medicine for very specific people with specific life circumstances and helping a lot of people. And if you guys want me to go into more depth on anything, please ask a question.
Deeper.
What would you like to know more about?
Cell apoptosis.
I will get. Oh, all right, good timing. So even though we've only really just begun to scratch the surface in understanding this, we are seeing cannabis do really amazing things with people who are really hurting. So I'm going to get into some of what researchers are actually watching happen with cannabis. So first is cancers. Virtually all types of cancers. Cannabis is really amazing. First, just increasing the effectiveness of conventional treatments and increasing the survival rate of people who go through conventional treatments like chemotherapy. Tremendously relieves the symptoms. So it's analgesic, meaning it's pain relieving or reducing the pain sensations that people experience, as well as its antiemetic qualities. This is reducing the amount of vomiting that people experience or nausea, and increasing appetite in people who've just lost the will to eat. We also find that cannabis directly attacks or treats the cancer itself, and this is done in a variety of ways. First is cannabis selectively induces apoptosis. Apoptosis is the natural death process that a cell goes through, but when a cell is infected with cancer or cancer-causing virus, cancer actually blocks that process. So these infected cells just begin to accumulate within the body and never die. But what we watch with cannabis is amazing. It actually selectively chooses the cancer cells and induces this process, killing them, leaving the healthy cells intact. We also find that cannabis blocks angiogenesis. This is the process by which, that top right picture is actually a picture of apoptosis. Angiogenesis, this bottom right picture is a picture of a tumor cell actually accumulating more red blood cells. That's the process that tumors use to grow and continue to propagate. Cannabis blocks angiogenesis, basically starving out the tumors and forcing them to die and disintegrate. And then we also find that cannabis prevents the metastasization of cannabis or cancer and viruses that cause cancer, so preventing its spread throughout the body.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does it do all that? Yeah. How do you do it?
Part of it has to do with your body already has the ability to do it on its own, and so it's like restoring your body's ability to do that. A lot of people come into contact with all of us have come into contact with viruses that cause cancer. And in a healthy, functioning body, we're able to fend that off on our own. But with the help of cannabis, if we have the ability to do that again, it may go beyond that. Like I said, we're really just beginning to understand how this plant works, but it's happening with a lot of people. I personally have worked with 2 patients that have, their cancer has gone into remission after using only cannabis. I'll go into more about dosing for cancer towards the end of the presentation, but
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know how it inhibits, reduces, or prevents the occurrence of seizures?
I'll get a little bit into neurodegenerative diseases and neurological disorders in a few slides.
Does it affect animals too?
It does.
Yes.
Who's doing the research?
If you come up to me afterwards, I can send you references on this stuff. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Sorry. I will take more questions at the end though. So neurodegenerative diseases and disorders, these are things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, or even epilepsy. Cannabis helps in a variety of ways. First, it's a neuroprotectant. Cannabis actually supports the brain's intrinsic repair mechanisms. So this is helping the brain rebuild neurons and rebuild neural pathways. We also find that cannabis helps inhibit the growth and spread of neurotic plaques that are responsible for things like Alzheimer's and dementia. I guess I didn't get into epilepsy, but I'll try to at the end. Psychological disorders. When I say this, I'm referring to things like ADD, ADHD, and these other issues listed up here at the top. First, in something like ADD and ADHD, we watch that cannabis actually slows the speed at which synapses are firing within the brain. So it helps someone who's the victim of an overactive brain actually focus on a subject of their choosing. In someone with depression or bipolar disorder, cannabis helps to restore healthy levels of cannabinoids within the brain, so helping to restore a more normal or healthy brain chemistry. And PTSD, you can actually physically see fragmented nervous systems in someone who's suffered PTSD, and we find that cannabis actually helps the brain or the nervous system release these fragmented cells and retrain the brain that pieces come, that it's safe again. And addiction. Cannabis is incredible for anyone who is looking to get off of something like an opioid addiction and going through severe withdrawals. Cannabis helps to reduce the physical, psychological, and chemical withdrawal symptoms that people go through. Gastrointestinal issues. These are things like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, IBS. If any of you have known someone with one of these issues, then you know that this is an incredibly painful disorder to have, with very painful side effects. Cannabis is very, very good for gastrointestinal issues. First, in just relieving the symptoms and its pain-relieving qualities and its reduction of nausea and vomiting. But there's often a tremendous amount of inflammation and tissue damage that accompanies a disorder like Crohn's disease, and cannabis helps to reduce that dramatically. It even modulates symptoms like constipation or diarrhea or acid reflux. And its muscle relaxing qualities help to reduce the muscle spasms within the intestinal muscles that cause that severely painful cramping. Autoimmune disorders, these are things like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. The way an autoimmune disease works is the patient has an overactive immune system, and so the immune system is actually attacking the host body itself. So in something like MS, the immune system is actually attacking the myelin sheath within the nervous system of the patient, and the consequences of something like this are devastating. And we find that cannabis is actually an immunomodulator. So with someone with an overactive immune system, it actually helps to suppress it and stop it from attacking the patient's body or organs. And the opposite is actually true in someone with a suppressed immune system. So someone with something like HIV, we actually find that cannabis helps to stimulate the immune system and bring it up to a more healthy level. Other chronic conditions, arthritis. Cannabis across the board is an incredibly powerful anti-inflammatory, and most of us, just given what's happened to our food and lifestyles, are subject to chronic inflammation, which is the source of a lot of different diseases and disorders. So that alone is a really powerful benefit that comes with using cannabis. It's its anti-inflammatory qualities. Asthma. It may seem counterintuitive, but smoking cannabis can actually help someone who's going through an asthma attack. Wow. This is because cannabis is a bronchodilator, so it helps to dilate the capillaries within the lungs and allow more air to flow into the respiratory system. Diabetes, cannabis helps to maintain healthy insulin levels so that blood sugar levels stay normal for longer.
The bronchodilator, there's a difference between smoking and vaporizing?
Vaporizing is usually less irritating to the lungs because it's at a much lower temperature and there's not as much carcinogens in it. But interestingly, even though smoking has 10 times the amount of carcinogens in it that a single cigarette does, they still find that people who smoke, compared to people who don't smoke anything at all, have lower rates of lung cancer. So that's as much depth as I'm going to get into as far as the health benefits that we're observing. I'm going to assume now that a lot of you guys are interested in using cannabis, so I want to give you some guidelines as far as choosing cannabis products and getting the most out of them. So first, it's just understanding strain selections. So the basics in this is knowing your indicas, sativas, and hybrids. Is this something that you guys know, or raise your hand if you want me to go into this, because it seems like, okay, cool. So indicas. These are more of your relaxing strains, more body-oriented strains. These are really good for anyone who is looking to help relaxing or sleeping. So if you have insomnia, anxiety, or even severe pain within your body, these are great. But they definitely tend to be more sedating and relaxing. Sativas, on the other hand, are like the opposite end of the spectrum. So these can be more invigorating and stimulating or energizing. They're also very great for pain, but they're really great for people who want more of that euphoric effect, so helping with things like depression, or even creativity is a good one. And on the very far end of indica or sativas, you get the more psychoactive, psychedelic experiences. And then hybrids are strains that have genetic parentage from either ends of the spectrum, and so it gives you a lot of variety in choosing something in between those two extremes.
Were the different types come from different areas of the world? Or how did they get to be separate?
They do. So sativas originated from more of the tropic climates, where indicas originated from more of the northern latitudes, and so there are significant differences in just the physical characteristics of these two plants. The two that I have here are actually hybrids, and a lot of what's grown in California now are hybrids, just because people want the sativa effects or characteristics, but the indicas are much more suited to grow in our climates, especially as you continue to move north. And so that's what's really great about hybrids. Yeah. So one step beyond strains is because our industry is still very young, and so there's a lot of difference between going into one dispensary and buying a strain that you like, and then maybe going into another one, especially in another state, and buying that same strain can have totally different effects. And part of this has to do with the cannabinoid profiles, these compounds that I told you within the plant that have these unique effects within your body. They can be very different from plant to plant, even in plants that were grown right next to each other. So some products and some companies are offering, like they do lab testing on their products, which is very important in the first place, just to make sure that it's contaminant free, but also to get the chem profiles on these products. So starting to look at, okay, how much THC is in the product that I really like that's having this effect that I really enjoy, that's really helping me with whatever condition that it is, and then really understanding that so that when you perhaps go to try another product or go to try another strain, that you try to make sure that it's relatively the same as much as you can in an industry that's still catching up to these standards. Delivery methods. I want to get into this a little bit because the way that you bring cannabis into your body has pretty significant differences. And first is just in duration and onset. So inhalation has an almost immediate onset when you smoke cannabis, either through like a joint or a pipe, or if you're inhaling it through a vaporizer. Usually you experience the results immediately, up to 5 minutes, and the duration is about 2 to 4 hours. Now, this is really great for someone who needs immediate relief. So someone who's going through an acute episode of pain or an episode of anxiety and needs immediate relief, that's when smoking or inhaling is really preferred. However, the dosing with inhalation can be very inaccurate, which is one drawback to this. When you are inhaling cannabis, and you exhale, as much as 60% of the compounds within your medicine can be lost to your exhale. So this creates a very broad range of the dose that you could be taking from one inhale to the next. Sublingual, this is referring to tinctures. So this is concentrated cannabis oil that's put into a carrier oil like coconut oil. And it's placed underneath the tongue, and it's allowed to sit there for about 2 minutes in order to absorb into the capillaries beneath the tongue. The onset on this application is about 30 to 60 minutes. The duration is about 4 to 6 hours. This allows for incredibly accurate dosing. You're going to get the full amount of your medicine when you take it this way. Edibles also allow for a more accurate dose, but the onset is a little more unpredictable. For most people, it can be anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half. However, everyone's metabolism is different, and so some people don't experience the effects for up to 3 hours, which can be risky if you start to double down on your... and the duration is considerably longer. This is 8 hours or more for most people. And then topical. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you should let everybody know that it says the cons of edibles is someone might accidentally eat a whole tray of brownies.
Yeah. Yeah. My first cannabis experience actually was taking an edible, not knowing that it was a cannabis edible. So it was a very intense experience. Topical transdermal applications of cannabis. This is applying cannabis oil that's in some kind of cream or topical directly to the skin. This has actually tremendous benefits on someone who suffers from arthritis or even just localized pain within your back. And there's no psychoactive effects to taking it this way, and it doesn't show up on the drug test or anything like that. But I really find that in my geriatric patients, this is a really good product to have because a lot of them just have very deeply ingrained fears around cannabis, but this gives them the relief without having to ingest it.
What about suppositories?
Suppositories are incredible. Brittany here has a company that makes suppositories. I have patients with cervical cancer that use suppositories, also prostate cancer, people who want to get the medicine as close to the affected area as possible. And also there's other benefits to that as well. There's some research that's showing that taking it either rectally can have, the way that your body absorbs it can be more bioavailable or more effective. So, but
What about the psycho effect? The psycho effect?
psychoactive effect.
Yeah.
I
Because I listened that a huge amount of THC through there. It doesn't go through the liver and help you to handle more amounts of THC or something.
Can you repeat the statement of the question?
He's asking what the psychoactive side effects are if you take it rectally or vaginally. In my patients, I've not seen that much of a psychoactive effect, but to keep in mind, when someone is using cannabis to treat cancer, generally they're taking upwards of 1,000 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams a day. Yeah, so this is a very intense process that someone goes through, where they're usually experiencing a lot of different side effects. So I hope that answers your question as best I could. So dosing. Most people take way too much cannabis. For it to be effective for medicinal purposes. And what I described is bringing like natural cannabinoid levels back into the body, regulating your endocannabinoid system. Microdosing seems to be a lot more effective in doing this. And so we're talking anywhere from 1/4 milligram to 5 milligrams a day. Because cannabis is really interesting in being able to treat something like, say, anxiety. So if you look at this bottom picture here, say this is a patient with anxiety, and you're beginning to dose them. When you first begin to dose, and you increase the dose, they're going to experience more and more benefits from the cannabis, but at a certain point, they're going to experience the most benefits that cannabis has to offer. And if you continue to increase the dose beyond that, there's a pretty dramatic drop-off in the benefits that they're going to be experiencing. This is called a biphasic response. That's that bell curve that we see. And everyone actually does have an optimum dose of cannabis, and it's different for every single person because everyone's life circumstances are different. So it's really up to you to find out what dose works best for you through conscious trial and error, and really just paying attention to your body and feeling it out, and starting low and go slow is what we say. Now, something important to keep in mind is that cannabis also has a paradoxical effect. So the same patient with anxiety, if they continue to increase the dose, at a certain point they're going to induce the symptom, the very symptom that it is that they're trying to treat. So you can actually create a panic attack with cannabis, or induce anxiety, induce depression, or induce nausea. Now, there are a lot of exceptions to this rule, depending on what you're using cannabis for. Like cancer patients, for example, they're taking a lot of medicine. So that's it. You have a question?
I actually had a question just on that. So is this kind of like judged by you internally, or is there an actual number that we can go by, at least for the general census?
As far as dosing goes?
Or as far as this curve that you have on the board, or on the wall?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone's different. Like I said, most people's optimum dose, depending on what it is that they're using cannabis for. Now, see, a lot of people confuse the euphoric side effects of cannabis, or the psychoactive side effects of cannabis, with the medical benefits that they're getting from it of achieving a more normal system. And that's just not the case. You're actually accumulating these cannabinoids in your body over time, and that's what's going to give you the long-lasting health benefits that this plant has to offer. So as far as finding that for yourself, I would go with these numbers. These tend to apply to a lot of people. You know, start with 5 milligrams or less and see how you feel, and gradually increase that dose and just pay attention. Does that answer your question? Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between CBD and THC? And I don't know if there's any correlation between indica and CBD in terms of like the hybrid, when you put products together, either like tinctures or whatever they are, there's usually a relationship between the CBD and the THC content. Can you explain what that's all means?
Yeah, it's not a simple answer, and there's a lot more in a given plant, a given medicine, especially, like you mentioned, a strain. There's a lot of stuff going on there than just besides the THC and the CBD. THC and CBD are just the most well-known, and CBD is helping a lot of people within this industry push cannabis medicine forward because it doesn't have the psychoactive qualities. CBD is incredible. It has a lot of benefits. We're seeing it do amazing things. CBD on its own, or at least in very, very high doses relative to all the other compounds, is having tremendous results with forms of cancer, forms of depression, anxiety. Some people say that CBD is sedating, but it's really neither sedating nor stimulating. It really depends on the individual. Cannabis helps to bring someone back to balance. And so if someone needs stimulation, then it tends to be stimulating. If someone needs more sedation, then it tends to be sedating. And as far as the relationship with each other, it's THC tends to make CBD more effective. A lot of studies are showing that. CBD also tends to pull back or modulate the psychoactive qualities of THC, so that you can still get more of the health benefits that it has to offer. THC is incredible for fighting cancer. A lot of those, that research that I showed you, or at least the examples that I showed you, that those are very heavy doses of THC that are killing those forms of cancer. Yeah.
Can you say something about cannabis and memory impairment? Do you know anything about the dynamic?
There is a lot of evidence that cannabis does create short-term memory loss.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of people are taking way larger doses than they should. However, the myths about it causing brain damage is totally false. In fact, the opposite is true. Cannabis actually helps to rebuild neurons and neural pathways within the brain.
So when you're creating these medicines, are you using all of the elements within cannabis? I'm wondering, like when you vaporize, there's certain temperatures where you fire terpenes or the antiemetics. The lower the temperature, the less of the range of the ingredients within cannabis are used. You know what I mean?
Yeah, is Gil still here? Yeah, he was just talking about a really cool company that's doing like isolated compound extractions to where you can vaporize an individual compound and actually mix it on your own to start to do experimentation with what works best for your body. It's really cool. It's something very new. So.
Yeah, I've heard of companies like you who are making like customized highs, like this is for creative and this is for...
Yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. Yeah. You had a question?
My question is pertaining to the microdosing. My understanding is one of the products that we sell at our dispensary is a 2.5 milligram, and how I was addressed to sell it to people that are using it for their medicine is to take it every 3 to 4 hours to kind of maintain that sense of homeostasis that you were talking about earlier. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, because I do agree that a lot of people are completely off the Richter scale with how much. I mean, they're wanting 150 milligrams, 500 milligrams, and I'm just wondering how to kind of pitch it so that it is doing more of the healing benefit as opposed to just being blasted.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's really difficult to give you guys a dose like this. Really, when I'm working with a patient, I take a lot into consideration everything that's going on within their life and what it is that they're looking to do, and also what they're not saying that's happening before helping them. Also, I try not to even tell people what dose to take. It's more like, I'm not a doctor,
Right.
And most doctors don't even know that this, the endocannabinoid system is something that's just now beginning to be taught in some medical schools. This is a part of our physiology we didn't even know existed like 12 years ago. And that has to do with, it's a fat-soluble system. The instruments to even detect or work on a system like this didn't exist until within the last few decades. So this is really like going to be a major shift in medicine. This is a field that's incredibly exciting to a lot of pharmaceutical companies because we're all of a sudden realizing that there's this new potential for medicines to interact with the body in a very different way, with the body in a very different way than we've previously been doing.
Now that you brought up pharmaceuticals, there is historically some problems with certain synthetic cannabinoids that have been produced in the past, some sort of opposite reaction. You know anything about that?
Yeah, this is a complex question to answer, but a lot of what pharmaceutical companies are trying to do is to create a synthetic, isolated, patentable compound. And what we find is that it's not that simple. There's a lot of, it's these compounds in combination, and even the source of it and how it's derived that has the most potent medicinal benefit to it. So,
do you know about CBDA and THCA?
Yeah, so THCA and CBDA, all of the compounds within cannabis actually have an acidic form. And this is its raw form, and in that acidic form, the way that it interacts with your body is totally different. So THCA is not psychoactive. So if you were to juice, I take these leaves and I actually put them in my smoothie every morning to get the antioxidant effects, the anti-inflammatory effects of cannabis, but none of the psychoactive effects. So CBD is the same way. When you apply heat to these compounds, it's no longer in its acidic form. This is a process called decarboxylation, and what gives you THC. So when you light your flower on fire, you're applying heat, you're decarboxylating the THCA that's inside of it, and it becomes psychoactive THC.
Did you see any future in the juicing industry, and how far are we from, having that
I
daily?
went to Ojai this weekend and they were offering CBD in smoothies, so.
Well, the actual raw leaf juice, like wheatgrass, that's.
Most of the beverage companies that I see are not it's too expensive right now to really juice these plants the way that you would need to. But a lot of companies that I see, like in Oregon, there are kombucha companies that do like extracts, the concentrated oils of these plants, and they infuse it into their beverage.
So they still giving you the effect in a juice before even they flower? When they are in vegetation, you still can put in the
Some of them, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits. I didn't go into it because it's so long. You look at any one of these compounds and you'll find at least 20 benefits that they're going to give you. And then when you start to combine them, there's even more benefits that they give you.
So it's a market for vegetation plants.
Yeah, yeah.
That is not for flower.
Yeah, I mean, one day what I would like to see is like a juice bar that has cannabis like all over the place, and you're just pulling leaves off and making your juice. Yeah.
So when you smoke, it's very well known that more you smoke, you create a resistance to what the amount, how high you get when you smoke. So question is, in the medical effect, when you're taking big amounts of all these THC, CBD, or these compounds, does your body create a resistance to heal themselves with these compounds in the same way that they do when we smoke?
Not necessarily. Part of what I mentioned before is that we find that your body actually starts to produce more of these receptor sites the more you smoke cannabis. Now, there is definitely too much of a good thing because if you put too much cannabinoids within your body that it's not supposed to have, that's going to have negative side effects to it. But as far as there's so much to that question, because a lot of it has to do with psychological issues. You build up a psychological tolerance to the psychoactive effects and the experience that you have when you smoke cannabis. So it's not quite that simple to answer that question.
And if you use it like for example, whatever, let's say, what is the name? Arthritis.
Yeah.
You gonna start to have the good effects, and you have to take it forever, or using this is gonna get to the point where you don't need to use it anymore.
With arthritis, that's probably going to be a lifelong condition that you're going to be using cannabis to help. Yeah. Yes.
Knowing now that we have an endocannabinoid system, would you go as far as to saying that cannabis is cannabis is a direct biological necessity of humankind?
What I would say is that this plant is likely something that we evolved with. An endocannabinoid system exists in every vertebrate animal on the planet. It begins to form while we're still in the womb. You can look at animals within nature, like bears. When they are sick, they actually go and they eat herbs within the forest to heal themselves. And I suspect that that's something that we did with this plant a very, very long time ago.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm changing the subject just slightly, but I was curious for the microdosing. Is that the same for THC as CBD? Like when you go to the store and you are getting CBD, like CBD dominant versus THC?
I'm referring to just cannabis concentrate in general. But yeah, keep in mind this is all very new for a lot of people, but this is best advice today.
Can you talk a little bit about what is going to be changing in December, for the market, if you will, or the average citizen's ability to get this medicine?
We'll see. You won't see a lot of change probably until July. I don't think you're going to see a big shift in December. I think it's going to be slow. You're going to start to see changes in July, and then it'll be pretty gradual. That's what I think. Some people might think differently in this room.
If, say someone has cancer, where would you start with them to start healing? What would you do?
The first thing I do is ask them what they want to do. But people who are very serious about making serious changes in their life and committing to a cannabis regimen,
Right.
Generally what we do is we try to get them through, and everyone's different, I'm just speaking in general terms right now, aggressive cannabis therapies usually go through about 60 grams. That's what is that? That's 60,000 grams of cannabis in a 90-day cycle, and so you titrate them up during that time. You get them up to about 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day, and they're doing. I mean, these people go down during that time, and you're doing a lot of other things during this time. You're changing their diet, you're changing their lifestyle. You get them living healthily while doing this regimen to detox their body.
Ryan, are you talking about the Rick Simpson oil when you're giving this protocol, or are you having them doing whatever works best for them?
It's not always Rick Simpson oil. Rick Simpson oil is referring to a type of that's usually FECO extraction. So this is an alcohol extraction of cannabis, but we do this with CO2 extractions, BHO extractions, CBD heavy concentrate. So it just depends on the individual.
What's your feeling about the CBD waters they have out there? There's not a sufficient amount of CBD, and it's
The CBD water thing where?
everybody's coming out with a new CBD, a water that's got CBD or hemp in it.
So there are a lot of hemp-derived CBD products out there. CBD is CBD. Now, so not necessarily saying that the CBD is not good in these hemp products, but one thing to keep in mind is that the amount of CBD that's in a hemp plant is so small compared to in a cannabis plant. The amount of plant matter that you need to extract, it's ridiculous, and so it's incredibly environmentally has a big tax on our environment, and it's very inefficient. And I would also be concerned as to where the hemp is being sourced and what the heavy metal content is, what pesticides or fertilizer are being used on it, because when you have that much plant matter being concentrated into such a concentrate, all that's being accumulated. So that's what I would keep in mind when looking at hemp.
You give some numbers on the bottles, and it says 0.03, which is really hemp, isn't it? If it's at that
0.03.
CBD, yeah. CBD.
They're just referring to the amount of CBD that's in it?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
That's like nothing, right?
It sounds very small to me.
Compared to water. Yeah.
I just wanted to be very clear about the microdosing. So you mentioned some neurological benefits, and I was just wondering, does it inhibit those vastly when you do overdose on marijuana?
Inhibit those vastly when you
well, you were mentioning
does it
the
impair your
effect on
cognitive?
neuron. Yes, exactly, and the benefits. Does it? How much do you have? I mean, when you overdose, how does that affect all the pros in terms of what it does for your neurons?
If you're asking if you're going to have long-term damage to your memory, is that what you're asking? If you take too much?
Yeah.
No, that's not something you have to worry about.
Okay.
Most people, what you have to worry about when you take too much is feeling almost like, if you take a lot, like feeling kind of hungover the next day, sometimes being like emotionally distraught from the experience that you have. But the side effects with cannabis, especially compared to pharmaceuticals, are very minor and short-lived. And I'd also, there's no lethal dose with cannabis. It doesn't really matter how much you take, how much you knock yourself out. There's no receptor sites on the back of your brainstem here that's responsible for your breathing. So it doesn't stop your breath, it doesn't stop your heart, so you really can't overdose with cannabis. Yes.
I have an 18-year-old stepdaughter who just graduated high school, and the message that they're telling the kids isn't don't smoke pot, but wait till you're 25 years old to smoke pot, because in the developing brain, it actually has a negative impact. Is that even true?
How would we know? I mean, they're not running clinical trials on children smoking cannabis, so
Did her eight, man.
I'm okay.
So there is. So just to answer that question, because it is important, there are concerns, like Sanjay Gupta, he goes on national television, he says he wouldn't give it to a child because he's worried about the developing brain and the effect it would have. There's concerns, but I think there's also places where you take the risk. So epilepsy is a really good example.
Right.
The types of medications that they give children that are suffering from epilepsy, the side effects are horrifying. So that's a good reason. We have patients, children with autism, like severe forms of autism where they're violent and they hurt themselves. They use cannabis and notice really good results. And so I think there are times where, even as a parent, you make the decision to perhaps try cannabis, a CBD-rich option that doesn't have the psychoactive qualities instead of what's available in pharmaceuticals. Yes? Okay, last.
Okay. So you said that CBD is helpful for cancer, but you said THC is more helpful. At what point would you move someone from a CBD-rich to more THC? Can you speak about that?
I don't mean to say one is any more or less helpful than the other. I actually think in the future we will find unique formulas that do work for types of cancer and types of people, but at this point, THC does have euphoric or psychoactive side effects that come along with it. Some people are very adverse to that for one reason or another, and so CBD is a very good option for those people. So I just want to close with saying that so I'm a cannabis consultant. This is kind of a new position within our world that's a void that I'm and a lot of other people are filling. So I work with patients one-on-one to help them understand how this plant works as a medicine and help them, guide them through the process of finding what works best for them. And I work with an organization called Cannabis Healing Solutions, and they have a cannabis ambassador program. So if this is an offering that you would like to bring into your communities and make available to your communities, I encourage you to apply for it. And yeah, thank you very much for coming out and your engagement. I really appreciate it.